ASHOKA's Changemakers. Tell us about ASHOKA first.
ASHOKA was founded by an individual named Bill Drayton 30 years ago. He believed that the silos that had been created over, centuries, that separated the business community, the entrepreneurial community, from the citizen sector, social community, was at the core of many of the problems that we were facing. Really needed to marry those two groups together. Social for the networks, for the ability to understand how the community needs were, the barriers, the solutions. The business for the acumen, the ability to set goals, discipline, etc. Marrying those two together, and resources as well from the business community, would allow for us to jointly move forward on a number of important initiatives that require business to thrive and society to thrive. So there was, he felt that those kinds of joint initiatives were actually being led by a number of individuals around the world that really most organizations or media, etc., didn't know about. So he wanted to find those individuals, get a real belief that they were there solving those problems. And so he started ASHOKA. He went around the world, looked for where the best ideas were coming, found the individuals who were developing those ideas, implementing them. They would go through a highly vetted process to ensure that that idea was unique, scalable, literally transform the world on a system-wide basis. And they would be named ASHOKA Fellows, and they would be given 3 years of stipend so that they could really focus on their initiative to really bring it to the level that it needed to be for the world. And through ASHOKA fellowship program, build a global association of social entrepreneurs, so people didn't feel alone. Because many of these people are really confronting barriers in a whole new way that tend to isolate them. No one wants the status quo to be disrupted, and they were disrupting it. So he was able to connect them with people around the world who were doing exactly that.
So you've talked about unique ideas that are scalable and social entrepreneurship. What are some of those great ideas that you've seen in your work at ASHOKA?
One that I like because it's very disruptive and it's on a topic that usually is not discussed in public is the issue that 1 in 8 people around the world don't have access to sanitation facilities, toilets, showers, and by extension running water. And so this is a particular interesting individual from Kenya. His name is David Korea, and he started EcoToilets. And the issue was that even when toilets were actually donated by an NGO or even the government sponsored toilets, they would quickly go into disarray because of the cost to maintain them. And also people weren't in the practice of using these toilets. They had other ways to deal with issues over the centuries. So what he did was create a whole kind of community gathering around these toilets that he would erect for the urban poor in Nairobi. And so what he would do is create kiosks and support local entrepreneurs to sell newspapers, beverages, shoe shine, etc., magazines, that a portion of that money, of course, would go to the entrepreneur selling, and a good portion of it would go to maintain the toilets. So he was able to create this whole system that has been sustainable and is now scaled right across Kenya in major cities.
What's a changemaker?
A changemaker is someone who has had the opportunity in their lives, usually at a very young age, to recognize their power to change the world. So essentially they have the confidence to care and to act. And a changemaker is someone who's an empathetic leader, someone who not only creates the opportunities for themselves to be a leader, but creates the environment for others around them to become leaders. So literally, they are a multiplier effect for more and more change makers. So change making is really about identifying a problem in your community and coming up with an innovative solution to overcome that. And we believe for every problem that's facing humanity, there is a change maker out there, yet discovered, who's coming up with a solution. And that's our job at Changemakers, is to use the power of the internet and our ability now to get into places that we've never been able to touch before, also through mobile, etc., and discover those unknown gems and invite them to our platform, changemakers.com, to meet other change makers, and in turn for us to be able to choose the most cutting edge innovations to present to the world.
As the Director of Community for Changemakers in a rapidly shrinking world, shrinking due to new technologies, how do you define community?
When I would think about community, I would think about it from the idea where there's a collection of people who are working together to overcome barriers. So there's natural gathering. So it's no longer geographic, and I would say it's no longer based on race, and it's no longer necessarily based on socioeconomics. I think, from my perspective, a community is those people who hold certain visions in common. And so we see clusters of change making happening around a particular initiative, and that's where I see actually the most vibrant community development.
So let's talk about some of those change makers that you've met, some of the ones you work with, and some of the ones you're hoping to meet.
Well, there's an individual, his name is Eric Green, and what I like about what Eric did, and what he won our Disruptive Innovations in Health competition. So the premise of the Disruptive Innovation in Health competition, was a very long title, was the idea that many of the traditional, or let's say the current healthcare systems, are not benefiting the majority of the people that they're expected to serve for whatever reason. Resources, etc. So a lot of people are meeting their healthcare issues off the grid, and they're coming up with interesting ways to do that. And so we wanted to discover what those innovations were. That we thought if we could look at them and put them back into the standard system, it would disrupt the system. So one idea that came forward that we really, really liked was this particular, he was a design student from Stanford, that in his travels to Mexico found out that the highest level of death rates in children were a result of asthma. And that when he started doing a little bit of research about that, he found that most of the people couldn't afford the kind of asthma respirators, that they were cheaply made, and what was happening is the actual medicine wasn't getting into the lungs. It was actually staying up in the throat. They also were very, very had a lot of metal taste and were very cold. So he recognized that this was an issue, and he's not a medical student, he has nothing really was involved with health. But what he is a design student. So he created an origami, a paper origami that would fit over top of the inhaler. It was very colorful, so the children really liked it. They actually liked putting it together. And it would sit on front, and when you squeezed it, the actual medicine would get right to the lungs. And now that's been scaled. We actually had a number of pharmaceutical companies, when they saw that this was happening on Changemakers, adopted this because he actually wanted it to happen, wanted to scale it. And now we're seeing those kind of origami paper inhalers all through Mexico and now in Israel.
Right here at Clinton Global Initiative, there is a focus on women and girls. Do any of the work that you do in community at Changemakers have a women and girls focus?
Absolutely. We actually just finished, and that's one of the reasons why there's a real focus at the Clinton Global Initiative, because of our competition with Exxon. Exxon has made a commitment to bridge the gap between women and technology. So right now, as the world becomes, literally transformed through technology, women are not early adopters. And in many ways it's culturally inappropriate in certain parts of the world to take on a leading role with technology. Exxon and Changemakers partnered together to find the best innovations to help women bridge that gap. And so some of our great initiatives that we've been sharing at this Clinton Global Initiative are specifically about that. For instance, one particular organization has been introducing women to tractors, and the incredible hard labor that goes in and the hours that go into hoeing a field, etc. Literally introducing women to tractors, but first they have to convince the husbands that this is an okay thing for their wife to do, because it's a very masculine, understood masculine practice to use the tractor. And what they do is convince one family to have a woman use the tractor to plow the fields and demonstrate to one family how much more yield that particular crop has had, and that the woman has more time in the home because she's not in the field tending to all the other domestic chores, as well as the woman is actually making more money for the family. Once one woman's story happens in a community, then everyone else wants to come on.
Let's say that you're working with ASHOKA during its 40th anniversary, 10 years from now, and you look back and you say, I've done well. What will you? What are some of the things that you will do?
We'll have places like Seattle call themselves a change-making city. Literally, you have crossed the threshold in terms of the number of people who care and act, and the number of people who contribute, and the number of people who nominate innovators in their community. I think I come from a community of change makers. It doesn't matter what is happening in the town, whether it's an elementary school that's putting on a play, or whether it's a woman who's talking about the mangroves being decimated on the shores of Thailand for the shrimp industry. My community comes out in full glory. There isn't one social change event that doesn't have a packed audience. And there isn't one individual in my community that isn't giving their time, their voice, and their financial support. I feel that's a change-making community.